Have you ever woken up in the morning with a crick in your neck or a sore back? It's usually dismissed with the phrase, you just slept funny. What's interesting about this is that there's nothing humorous about reaching over and surveying that pained area in question with your fingertips to find the well-defined stitches surrounding the region. You're sitting at home, on the computer, after a long day at school, like you always do. You check the clock on your computer. It is 9 p.m., and your parents are probably asleep upstairs like always. You hear a sharp sound of a TV turning on, and you know it's probably your sister watching Doctor Who or playing on the Wii like she always does every night. You decide to check your Facebook status out of pure habit, and you see that you have a message on your wall. You begin to read. Your mom and I are so proud of you. You're growing up so fast. We just want to thank you again for watching the house while we stay at Disneyland with your little sister. Hope you're having fun, Dad. You think to yourself, oh yeah, I forgot they were out. You then hear something click. As you hear the sound of the television turning off upstairs, you freeze like a statue in your tracks. Your blood runs cold. You begin to hear footsteps of someone coming down from the stairs behind you. The silence after the last footstep leaves you choking with your eyes wide with panic. You hold your breath, daring not even to glare at the right of you. All you can do is scream in your head and pray that the silence never breaks. All you do is pray for the silence. You come into possession of an old box. Inside are several glass vials filled with dirt, dust, and tiny bits of gravel or cement. The vials are labeled with the places and dates, such as Port Chicago, July 17th, 1944. Hayflix, July 6th, 1717. And Guernica, July 17th, 1936. A quick trip to the library confirms that all are dates of massive loss of life and explosions. A few days later, a package arrives with no return address. Inside is an empty vial, labeled with your hometown and next week's date. There was a couple from Texas who were planning a weekend trip across the border of Mexico for a shopping spree. At the last minute, their babysitter canceled, so they had to bring along their 2-year-old son with them. They had gone across the border for an hour when the baby got free and ran round the corner. The mother tried to find him, but he disappeared. The mother found a police officer who told her to go to the gate and wait. Not really understanding this instruction, she did as she was told. About 45 minutes later, a man approached the border carrying the boy. The mother ran to him, grateful that he had been found. When the man realized it was the boy's mother, he dropped him and ran. The police were waiting for him. The boy was dead, and in less than the 45 minutes he was missing, he was cut open, all of his organs were removed, and he was stuffed with cocaine. The man was going to carry him across the border, as if he were asleep. There was a hunter in the woods, who after a long day hunting was in the middle of an immense forest. It was getting dark, and having lost all his bearings, he decided to head into one direction until he was clear of the increasing oppressive foliage. After what seemed like hours, he came across a cabin in a small clearing. Realizing how dark it had grown, he decided to see if he could stay there for the night. He approached and found the door ajar. Nobody was inside. The hunter flopped down on a single bed, deciding to explain himself to the owner in the morning. As he looked around, he was surprised to see the walls adorned by many portraits, all painted with incredible detail. Without exception, they appeared to be staring down at him. They appeared to be staring at him with features twisted into looks of hatred. Staring back, he grew increasingly uncomfortable. Making a concentrated effort to ignore the many hateful faces, he turned to face the wall, and, exhausted, he fell into a restless sleep. Face down, in an unfamiliar bed, he turned blinking into unexpected sunlight. Looking up, he discovered that the cabin had no portraits, only windows. When thinking back to our earliest memories, nothing is concrete. A string of hazy images come to mind like random snapshots out of time, each one associated with certain feelings and emotions. They are imbued with a mystical, dreamlike quality, a gift born of child naivete. The magic of every Christmas, when Santa was still real, for example, is an experience of pure joy that is lost with maturity. Many of these snapshots are impossible to place in any sort of context. They're just there, sunken in the crevices of the brain without rhyme or reason. Playing with my dad's beard in a wooden paneled room, him smiling down at me, is comforting. Or discovering a long row of marching ants in someone's wooded backyard all by myself was exciting. Some of them don't even seem real in hindsight. Did I actually fall from that tree by the lake, only to land on my feet without a scratch? Was it really a dream? I don't think so. Sure, I have memories of distant dreams, but there is a clear distinction between the dreams and reality of my past. I don't know how I can tell, I just can. And for this reason, one memory has always troubled me. The experience was so surreal, and yet certain details stand out with marked clarity. I'm not exactly sure when it happened. I couldn't have been older than 5 or 6. My brother and I were sleeping in our bunk bed. Because he was older, he got the top bunk. I'd just woken up, but it was still nighttime, and something felt different. I remember seeing and smelling the rain, but not hearing it. The window was open, and it was very cold in the room. Why was the window open? The curtains were gently flapping, but there was no breeze. The quiet was so intense it buzzed through my ears. I'd been lying on my side with one arm dangling off the edge of the bed. Gradually, I became aware that there was warmer near the floor. I felt some kind of heated breeze gently strike my hand, coming and going in short bursts. Finally, I recognized it as someone's breath. Then the woman slid out from under my bed. The night showed that she had long, blondish hair and wore a white nightgown, and in the dimness, I thought it was my mother. I wasn't at all scared. It's funny how a child's mind works. What's Mommy doing under the bed? Must be getting something or checking for monsters. I was too tired to say anything and remained motionless, watching. The woman was on her back, but her face stayed in the shadows. She rolled over and crawled on all fours to the far end of the bed, then glided up the ladder of the top bunk. Her every movement was silky smooth and completely silent. She reminded me of a white ribbon dancing in the wind. I closed my eyes and fell back to sleep. I also remember my brother telling me about a weird dream the next morning. He dreamed of a woman who lived under the floor and came out at night to play in the rain. Her clothes got soaked. She went back inside and would whisper things to anyone who was sleeping. It became a recurring dream for him, until our family moved out of that house. Strange what the brain chooses to remember. Man was so excited to tell his wife about his new promotion that he drove his car right up his front door, through a large pile of leaves they'd raked up the day before. He told his wife the good news, and after some congratulations, he asked where their son was.
He's playing outside in the fortress built out of leaves.
A professor who was famous for his creative exam questions handed out the final exam to his students. The exam only had one question. What is courage? The only A given on that particular exam was to a quiet man who wrote simply, "This is," and promptly shot himself in the head with a revolver after handing in his paper. The bell tolling through the long stone corridors, as a child, the sound of comfort, a call to joy. Now, in ice chill, as silent screams shattered through the rolling fog. For years we heard the little voices and footsteps of the ghost children in our old farmhouse, and we got used to them. Then one day, they all went quiet, which should have been our cue to leave. After struggling desperately to move any part of his paralytic body, just to alert the doctors that he was conscious before they made the first incision, he was relieved to see that one of the nurses had noticed his pupils dilating from the bright light. She leaned in close, and a whisper that tickled his ears said,
"You think we don't know you're awake?"
Years ago, a lone chair appeared in the center of the basement, and no matter how many times I put it back in the corner, it always found a way back to the center. It took a long time to realize that it was positioned underneath the kitchen, almost like someone had taken a seat at the dinner table with the rest of us. I ignore the sound of my roommate tapping on the door, asking me to let him in. I ignore it as I see him sleeping on the other side of the room. I woke up to hear the knocking on glass. At first, I thought it was the window, until I heard it come from the mirror again. Pet shelters close. Beef is strangely cheaper. They say practicing smiling in front of a mirror makes you feel happier. I just wish my reflection would join along. Yesterday, my parents told me I was too old for an imaginary friend, and that I had to let her go. They found her body this morning. My daughter won't stop crying and screaming in the middle of the night. I visit her grave and ask her to stop, but it doesn't help. In rural southern Illinois, a toy company began selling realistic baby dolls to expectant mothers. Apparently, after the mother had her child, the toy baby would start crying. Eventually, the rocking motion advertised to calm it down wouldn't work, and you couldn't get it to stop without shaking it. Eventually, when it started crying, the parent would have to beat it, and the beatings would have to go harder and harder to get it to be quiet. The only thing that seemed to shut the baby doll up permanently was to bash its head against a wall to destroy whatever mechanism triggered the crying. On more than one occasion, though, Neighbors called the authorities to report child abuse. And when the police arrived, they found the bloody remains of infants smeared across the walls and the floor. In most cases, the mother couldn't understand why the police were there. She just got rid of the stupid doll, and she rocked a baby-shaped bundle in her arms. In Berlin, after World War II, money was short, supplies were tight, and it seemed like everyone was hungry. At that time, people were telling tales of a young woman who saw a blind man picking his way through a crowd. The two started to talk. The man asked her for a favor. Could you deliver these letters to the address on the envelope? Well, it was on her way home, so she agreed. She started out to deliver the message when she turned around to see if there was anything else the blind man needed. But she spotted him hurrying through a cloud without his smoked glasses or white cane. She went to the police, who raided the address on the envelope, where they found heaps of human flesh for sale. And what was in the envelope? This is the last one I am sending you today. You get home tired after a long day's work and ready for a relaxing night alone. You reach for the light switch, but another hand is already there. And this is why you bought a clapper. Come home and the lights are off, clap on, and I can see the serial killer who is waiting by the switch. He looks stunned and tries to clap them off. I clap them back on. We clap them back on and off for a few minutes before he soon realizes what a failure of a serial killer he is, apologizes, and leaves my home.
Daddy, I had a bad dream.
You blink your eyes and pull up on your elbows. Your clock glows red in the darkness. It is 3:23 in the morning. Do you want to climb in bed and tell me about it?
No, Daddy.
The oddness of the situation wakes you up more fully. You can barely make out your daughter's pale form in the darkness of your room. Why not, sweetie?
Because in my dream, when I told you about the dream, the thing wearing Mommy's skin sat up.
For a moment, you feel paralyzed. You can't take your eyes off your daughter. The covers behind you begin to shift. You're the manager of a small store. You hired one of your friends and you've just found out that he has been stealing from the register, stealing from the stock, abandoning his post to visit his girlfriend in the back room, while he's the only one on duty. And the argument that you had with him at the office just didn't settle it for you. You pound on his door. When he opens up, he goes pale, soils himself and staggers back, gasping for breath. It doesn't impress you. Not really. You figure that he just thinks that you're showing up with the cops. Until you step through his door and glance to the side, where you get a good look at yourself in the mirror. Or at least, the parts of you that are still recognizable, after the shotgun blast that your friend gave you at the end of the argument. He is the Prince of Flies. Once just a mean little boy of 12 years old with a habit of picking the wings off of the backs of flies before he crushed and killed them in all manners of ways. Such cruelty often goes unnoticed in the world of adults. But there are other worlds who notice such things. So it came to be that the little boy came down with a nasty cough. The little boy could barely stand it. each cough making it harder to breathe. The little boy winked. Something tickled at the back of his throat, and would not cease. The little boy turned blue. It was then that the cause of his misery was forced out of his mouth. Flies, one after the other, came flying out. The flies would not cease, each cough expelling more, but more took their place. The boy choked to death as hundreds of flies filled his lungs and blocked his throat. But such stories never end so easy. The Prince of Flies will not rest. He wanders, always, perhaps seeking an end to the eternal torment, or perhaps he just enjoys making others suffer with him. Beware a little boy who both coughs and buzzes. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It is I, the Right Hand of Doom. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, share, and subscribe, and all that other social media crap. Follow me on Tumblr. I don't have a Twitter, and I don't like Facebook, so yeah, follow me on Tumblr, or subscribe, and say hello.